welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited you're here. Today's topic, am I just too old to lose weight? It sounds funny, but I get that every day in my office. People will come in and say, look, Doc, I don't get it. I do what I used to do. It used to work when I was in my 30s, maybe even 40s. Now that I'm in my 50s or 60s, the same thing doesn't work anymore. So the obvious question is, maybe I'm just too old. My metabolism slowed down. I don't know what to do about it. That's what we're going to talk about today. What causes that? What's really the truth? And what's the solution? So if you're up for learning about some of that, stick around. We're going to cover all the bases. And I am so excited to have you here. Okay. So, am I too old to lose weight? Here's the answer. No, absolutely not. In fact, here's the reality. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can lose weight at any age. Now, I'm not saying it's potentially a little more challenging when you're 70 compared to 20, right? Because we tend to be a bit more active. But all it boils down to is fat burning hormones and fat storing hormones. And today I'm going to explain what that all means. You see, we would like to believe, because honestly, it's an easy out, that, well, I'm getting a little older, my metabolism's slowing down, it's normal. Women come in every day, men too, and they say something to the effect of, well, my doctor said, it just is what it is. Like, just grin and bear it. It's as good as it's going to get, and just give up. Well, here's a thought. Have you ever turned on the TV and you see people in the Middle East or the Far East, or actually most countries around the world, and you look at them and you go, wow, their 60, 70, 80-year-olds aren't all overweight. So why do we have to be? We'd like to think, well, maybe it's because we just all eat too much. Maybe not. If you look at it, generally, people tend to eat about the same amount. In fact, I have people come in who eat way less, right? They bring me food journals. They're eating 700, 800, 900 calories a day. And they can't lose a pound. And they're just convinced it's because they're older. Look, your age, again, has nothing to do with it. Here's what it has something to do with. Whether your body is in balance or out of balance. Now, if you live long enough in America, your body is very likely out of balance. And I'm going to explain exactly what that means, but just realize, if your body's out of balance, fat storage hormones have become dominant, making it more likely for you to store body fat. It's really just that simple. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. When we talk about should we all be overweight just because we're older? I was invited to speak, it was years ago, at a conference. And the conference was on a cruise ship. And they had me come in and speak all about nutrition and this kind of stuff. And, my wife came with me because she was like, well, hey, if you're going on a cruise conference, I'm coming. So we're walking down the street. I forget which island it was, one of the islands in the Caribbean. And this older gentleman comes up to us and he goes, hey, would you guys like a coconut? And I remember looking at him going, well, you don't have any coconuts with you, and I don't know where you're going to, there's no stand here or anything. So, we were like, yeah, sure, we'd love a coconut. So he pulls a piece of rope. Well, actually, his belt was the rope. He pulls the rope, his belt off. He walks over to a coconut tree. It was 10 or 15 feet away. He uses the rope to climb the tree, pulls a knife out of his pocket, slices off a coconut. It falls to the ground. He comes down, opens up the coconut, and hands it to us. And I got to be honest, I was kind of blown away. I look at the guy and I'm like, how old are you? He was 83. Looked like he was in perfect shape. About the only reason I could tell he was older was because his beard and hair were kind of gray. Right? So at 83, this guy's climbing coconut trees with one single piece of rope. So look, why do I share that with you? Not to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I should be able to do that too, but God designed people to be healthy, right? Most likely, that guy in his environment just hasn't been subjected to the things we've been subjected to over the years. What does that mean? Well, look, guys, there's 3,000 chemicals in our food supply. And look, the companies love that, right? For instance, by us, we got Fry's Food and Drug, right? What does that mean? It means there's one operation that all the food in the front of the store, all the chemicals, all the junk, make us so unhealthy and out of balance that we need all the drugs in the back of the store. So it's a big business is what I'm getting at. And I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, but I will say, I think it's kind of interesting that ultimately, if you follow the money between horrible food and pharmaceuticals, it all tends to end up in the same place. So when I talk about being a rebel and the rebel reset and the whole idea of this podcast, it's about doing something different. Now that guy on a Caribbean island somewhere probably didn't know he was doing something different, but he's definitely eating different than most Americans, I would suggest. So what does that all boil down to? What I'm getting at is this. It's not your age that causes you to gain weight. It's the fact that if you lived here long enough, you've likely gotten your body out of balance. And there's two big areas in particular when it comes to weight gain. It has to do with gut health and liver health, right? Now, if you're eating processed foods, which who of us hasn't, at least for some period of time, it's full of things like herbicides and pesticides and heavy metals and artificial colors and sweeteners and flavors, and all these things do what? They wreak havoc on normal gut flora. So if you kill off the good healthy bacteria, bad guys grow. The yeast and all the bad guys do what? Well, unfortunately, they don't do really anything. And they certainly don't digest food. So if you don't digest food well, we start thinking of this as we get older, right? Like, yeah, I'm sensitive to more foods. I'm feeling a little more bloated. All super common, but definitely not normal. But the side effect of that is you'll have a pancreas downstream pumping out extra insulin. Insulin's a powerful fat storage hormone. So what happens? Is it because you're older that you're gaining weight? No, it's because if you've eaten bad food long enough, or even food that you think is good, it's still not as good as it could be, your fat storage hormones start to go up, right? So if your gut's off, insulin's higher. If your gut's off, you'll also likely have a sluggish liver. So for instance, if you've ever been told you have a fatty liver, or you have high liver enzymes, or you've had gallbladder issues or lost your gallbladder, it very likely means your liver is just, call it sluggish, right? Think of your liver like a campfire. If the campfire is burning really hot, like it's clean, right? You throw donuts in it, they burn right up. But what if the campfire is more like the morning after campfire? Where it's like those smoldering embers where you kind of look at it and you're like, well, if I blow on the soot and I throw a piece of paper in there and I get some little twigs, maybe I can get this going again. Well, if that's your metabolism, because that's accumulated over years and years. Now that's, again, not normal to happen, but it's common. It doesn't matter what you put in that fire, does it? Unless you build a new fire, it's not burning up anything. And that's the whole point, right? If you've lived long enough, usually your gut has become off. Now, how do you know if your gut's off? Well, less than 2 well-formed bowel movements, it's a good bet. If you have obvious symptoms like reflux, or you feel bloated, or you're sensitive to foods you didn't used to be, probably the number one thing that I see. People will come in and say, yeah, garlic bothers me now, or onions, or I don't know, you name it, all sorts of different things. Pasta, wine, bread, right? If you eat those things, you're like, ugh, that doesn't feel so good. Or other things like tomatoes or spicy foods or acidic foods. Usually that means something's going on gut-wise. Were you born that way? Of course not. But again, if you've eaten foods over time that have decreased the level of the good guys, increased the number of the bad guys, what starts to happen is that just becomes your body's new norm. That's a body that's stressed. It'll tend to increase cortisol and insulin, which are the two most powerful fat storage hormones, regardless of your age. So when people come into me and they say, hey doc, I don't get it. They bring me a food journal, right? They're like, here's my macros, here's my micros, here's my supplements, here's my personal training records. Like, what am I doing wrong? I'm like, look, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just that unfortunately you've created imbalances that while this works, right? Because what do they say to me? Like, if I'd have done this 10 years ago, it'd work perfect. Why is it working now? It's not because you are older or because you went through menopause. It's simply because your fat storage hormones are now up here. Your body's out of balance, your gut's off, your liver's off. And by the way, if you've done cycles of diet over your lifetime, right? Every time you go low calorie, what does your body think? It goes, well, I better do what? I better be really good at storing fat to protect her from the next famine, because apparently that's coming. You got to think, like, how did your body work 1,000 years ago? Well, 1,000 years ago is pretty straightforward, right? It's like you eat and then, like maybe you don't see food for a couple days, and then, you eat again. And so in those times with that super clean food, your gut always had a chance to clean itself out. But what I'm getting at is more importantly than the gut and the cleanup stuff is also the whole idea of clean, healthy food consistently. If you're putting bad food in, which we don't really even have a choice these days, right? Like, for instance, our vegetables, they're all radiated, right? Because we don't want E. coli outbreaks. So now we don't get good, healthy bacteria going in. And at the same time, we got artificial colors and sweeteners and flavors. So not only do we not get the good guys, we do everything that feeds the bad guys. So this is why most people's guts are off, promoting fat storage with almost anything someone eats. So what am I getting at in all of this? Ultimately, the answer is really simple. Focus on restoring your gut and your liver. you'll start burning fat. Don't worry about calories. The worst thing you can do is limit calories, because again, as soon as you do that, and every time you've done that in the past, your body goes, I better be good at storing fat. All of that needs to be reset. So when I talk about the rebel reset, what does it mean? It means do things differently. If you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get the results everybody else is getting. So the answer is really straightforward. As far as restoring gut health, think of it this way. Just avoid everything processed. Here's the simplest version of this I can give you. Number one, just do it for 2 weeks. Like this is like 2 weeks. If you're like, man, I can't lose weight, I'm bloated, I don't feel very good, something's up. Number one, no processed grains, right? So avoid the bread, pasta, tortillas, white flour, sugar. Avoid artificial sweeteners, colors, flavors. All those things where you read and you're like, there's like 30 ingredients here and you lost me after chicken. I don't know what the rest of that stuff is. Keep it out for a while. Avoid things like alcohol and coffee. I hate to say it, yeast love alcohol, particularly wine, which is alcohol and sugar. Those are the bad guys. Coffee acidifies the gut. I get it. I'm not saying you could never have it again, but if you've had a cup or two a day for the last 20 years, you tended to create an environment in the gut that ultimately is less healthy and will lead to promoting fat storage. That's just what I've seen clinically. So what I'll ask you to do, avoid alcohol, coffee, anything artificial, chemical. So then you're probably asking like, well, what's left? What can I eat? Here's the rule of thumb. If God made it, eat it. If man made it, don't eat it. Pretty straightforward, right? So all the vegetables you could think of, have at it. Enjoy them all, except for 2, corn and potatoes. They become sugar in the gut too quickly. So we want to give your gut a break. We don't want to feed anything bad or kill anything good. So lots of all the other vegetables. Healthy fats are great. Avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, butter, all good. Have at it, enjoy. Butter, by the way, should be from a grass-fed cow. If you feed a cow corn, it makes omega-6 fat, which is more pro-inflammatory. So we want omega-3 fats. Other things include things like whole grains, brown rice, wild rice, lentils, quinoa. If you've given your body no carbs for a long time, that's not really ideal, right? One, it's impossible to keep up. And if it's already, you're not losing weight doing it, then you need to reset all this. Go with good quality whole grains. Again, brown rice, wild rice, lentils, quinoa, the ones I stick to typically. Healthy fats, we talk about proteins, lean proteins, chicken, turkey, fish, eggs. Have at it, enjoy. You need protein. In particular, your gut needs protein, or your liver needs protein for detox pathways, right? Because ultimately, your answer, if you're struggling to lose weight as you're older, is really simple. It boils down to flood your body with what it needs, pull out what it doesn't need. Think of it like a spring cleaning. That resets the metabolism, gets that campfire burning hot burning campfire. You have a lot more flexibility with food later. Right? Because what happens with most people is all they can do is eat less and less and less and less. And eventually they got themselves into a corner where they're like, I'm eating 800 calories and I'm still not losing weight. We've got to start from scratch, reset it so that, I could eat a whole bunch of calories. And you will get there. I promise. That's what we help people do all the time by focusing on getting the gut right, the liver right, cleaning up the body. And that's the key to the whole thing. So hopefully that was super helpful. Oh, by the way, supplements. Get the best quality probiotic you can. If you want some information on that, you can go to Dr.Infantino.com. I've got a whole list of different supplements. You can start an account with FullScript, which is where doctors go to get their supplements. Highly recommend it. Because here's the problem with supplements. Most of them are garbage, particularly probiotics, it seems. So some of the brands that I use are in there. What else? Vitamin D, I would say is super helpful. Most people are really deficient. So probiotic, a good multivitamin D. Those are the basics, right? There's a ton of other supplements that people come into me with bagfuls of, but I always tell people, look, first, start eating well. Second, just go with the basics. I'm kind of a minimalist. If you start there and you notice, hey, my digestion's getting better, and in 2 weeks you're down 4, 5, 6 pounds, problem solved, right? It was pretty simple. Forget trying to diet. Forget the restrictions. Focus on getting healthy enough in the future to not have to. It can be done. So I hope you liked this episode. Again, if you're listening and you enjoyed that, if you wouldn't mind either sharing or do a quick star review, that would be super helpful. That helps us get this message out to more and more people. If you're watching me on like YouTube or something, if you click the little like thumbs up thing, that would be awesome. And until next time, live like a rebel. And what I mean by that is simple. Do things different. Focus on getting healthy. Forget trying to manage symptoms. Weight gain, if that's why you're here, is a symptom of a body out of balance. Restore balance and forget treating the symptom of weight gain. I promise you it'll pay dividends in the long run. Have an awesome day.